All right, so welcome. This is a presentation on behalf of our Prenatal Outreach Committee from UCLA ASDA. And tonight we're just going to be walking you guys through the AADSAS application because I know it's a little bit confusing. So let's get started. Okay, hi guys, I'm Adeline. I'm a D1 and I'm part of the committee. I'm an external affairs coordinator. I believe that's my title. And yeah, I graduated from University of the Pacific in 2021 and I'm from San Jose.
Yeah, and hi everyone, my name is Jocelyn. I'm also a D1, as you can see, at UCLA. Let's see, I graduated also from the University of the Pacific in 2021. And I'm from NorCal, so I'm from Saratoga. I don't know if any of you guys are from Saratoga, but yeah, so a little bit about myself.
Very similar intros.
Yeah. Okay, so here's just like an overview of the timeline. I'm sure a lot of you guys, most of you guys are probably already applying this cycle. So yeah, so most of you have probably like halfway through this timeline already, but we'll just do a brief overview. So before spring of the cycle you apply, so hopefully you've already done this. You want to ask for a letter of recommendation, and then some spring. So like right about now, you want to start prepping everything. So you want to start prepping your personal statement, your CV, like curriculum vitae, your resume, things like that. Also, like right now, you could start compiling lists of things you've done over the past like 4 years, like throughout your college career. And maybe if you're not in college, like maybe a little bit about what you've done after college. That will make filling out the application later easier. And then May 10th. So this is where we are. This is what this presentation is about right now. You want to, the AADSAS soft opening happens. So you want to start like looking at the portal, which we'll walk you through today, and then just fill out everything you can and like send the links for like letter of recommendations to your writers. We'll go over all this later, but yeah, this is what we'll be covering today, the May 10th soft opening, which is coming up in a few days. And then in May through December, hopefully you send it in earlier rather than in December. You want to send in your application, and then after you submit your application, then that's when interviews take place. So we'll just do a brief overview of just the AADSAS, and we'll have time for questions at the end if you guys have any other questions. So we have a little checklist here. So first, we want to complete your prerequisites. So I think now would be a good time to start looking at which schools you want to apply to and like what each school requires. Most schools require similar things like chemistry, biology, but some schools have like English requirements, some have psychology requirements. So just make sure you know which classes you need to be taking. So yeah, like I mentioned, research schools that you'd be interested in attending. You don't want to apply to schools that you don't want to attend. Personal statement, as I mentioned, so you want to start making your personal statement, like coming up with ideas now. Letters of recommendation, hopefully you've asked. If you haven't, you should ask as soon as possible so that the letter writers have a like heads up. And then transcripts. Transcripts you don't really need right now, but when the soft opening occurs on May 10th, you want to order the transcript right then, because sometimes it takes time. Extracurriculars, I went over that. You just want to sort of know what you've been doing the past few years so you can write about it in the portal. And then shadowing hours, make sure you have keep track of your shadowing hours to fill out that application.
Yeah, and we'll go over everything on the checklist, so don't worry if you feel like it was going really fast, because we were just doing a brief overview. And so, yeah, before you apply, you really want to research, right? So it costs money to apply to schools, and so you only want to apply to schools that you would actually attend, because worst comes to worst, right? You apply to say like 10 schools, and say you only get into one, and it's not a school that you would actually want to go to, or it's like the most expensive one, then chances are you're probably just gonna have to go there, because if you decline that offer and then reapply next year, schools talk and they'll know that you declined that offer the cycle before. And so schools have different application requirements. So it's really up to you to kind of figure out and research everything. So they have different deadlines, different prereqs, different letter of recommendation requirements. So some schools require like 3 letters, some schools require 4, and then like what kind of people they require it from is also different. And then some schools also have secondary applications. So yeah, it's really up to you to figure out everything before you choose which schools to apply, because if you don't research before and then you choose to apply to a school, and say you send in the initial application fee, but then you realize that you don't meet all the prerequisites, then you just wasted like basically like over $100 you're just giving them free money. And so schools also have different cultures, locations, and curriculums. So you want to figure out what you want, what you're looking for in a school. So just an example, just in terms of curriculums, right? Some schools are really didactic heavy and like research schools like UCLA. Some schools are more clinically based. And then some schools, it's not even lecture based. A lot of it, it's like PBL, which is problem-based learning, where it's a lot of you synthesize your own ideas, and it's a lot more discussion based. And so to kind of help with this research, right, there's a lot of different resources you can use. There's the AADSAS Dental School Explorer, which costs money, but I've heard from a lot of people, a lot of my friends have also used it, and they said that it's pretty helpful. I think it's like $25. It's not too expensive. And if you like are really clueless on what kind of school you want to go to, I'd say it's a pretty good investment. But if you don't want to spend money, right, you can go to different pre-dental clubs, and their Instagrams a lot of times have different events, like we're a pre-dental club and you guys are here right now. You can also just reach out to different students. So you can reach out to pre-dental students like among your university, or you can reach out to other dental students that are currently attending that school. You can also just go online and go to places like SDN and Reddit and Facebook, right? So people talk on there, there's like forums and different discussions. You can kind of figure out a little bit more of like the culture, like the informal culture, rather than like what the school presents as like what they want to present, And then also you can also reach out to a specific school. So they have different administration that you could reach out to if you have specific questions. And so, for example, I just wanted to give you guys a little picture of the prerequisites that UCLA offers. And so Joss is going to send a link in the chat right now that shows the different courses that they recommend per school. But a little highlight. So for example, UCLA requires both psychology and biochemistry, and it's a requirement that not every school requires. So for example, when I was applying, I had to take psychology my last semester because UCLA required it, and then I got accepted before my last semester. And so just do your own research. Most schools have like a website that show you. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And then, so application costs. So the first school you apply to is $259, and then every additional school is $112. And that's not cheap, right? So say you apply to 10 schools, which is like, I guess it's not a lot of schools, but it's definitely on the higher end. That's over $1,000 just to apply. And then there's also secondary application fees that depend on each school. And so what you want to make sure is once you send in an application, and like say you submit your secondaries, you want to double check that you submitted all your fees. Because some schools, if you don't pay that secondary fee, they don't even look at your application. So you just want to be really sure that you paid everything. And then there's also costs for in-person interviews. So I'm pretty sure you guys will have in-person interviews, I'm assuming. I guess it depends on the school, but you have to pay for flights and hotels, travel costs. So you have to take that into consideration when you're applying. And so these are just some of the important dates that we highlighted for you guys. You guys can kind of read it through it on your own, but you see the cycle. There's a soft opening on May 10th, and then you can start applying, submit your application on June 1st. The academic update periods are times when after each quarter or semester, you can resend them your transcript with your updated transcript. So your new grades for that semester or quarter. And then decision day is December 1st, but each school kind of does it their own way. Some schools decide, or some schools send it to all applicants on December 1st. Some it's like rolling, so it takes a little bit of time, but yeah, Yeah, the cycle closes in February, and that's the last day to submit all your official documents. But while Joss and I were making this presentation, we were saying, please submit your documents well before February. You don't want to wait till the last second.
Yeah. We can't help you if
Yeah.
if you wait till after December to submit stuff. Yeah, we can't really help you. So try to submit it by June, July, like, yeah.
Yeah, so submit things as soon as you get an email telling you to send them.
Okay, so next, I just took a little screenshot of like the AADSAS application. This is sort of when you log in, you make an account, you log in. This is what the first thing you'll see. So there's 4 different sections. And then we'll go through each section. So first, we're going to go through personal information. This one should be pretty self-explanatory. And I just wanted to mention, if you have any questions like during the presentation, just feel free to put it in the chat and we'll answer it at the end of the presentation. We'll just go through all the questions. So yeah, any question you have, just put it in the chat right now, and so you don't forget, and we'll go over it later. So yeah, so personal information, like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory. You fill out like your name, like your biographic information, where you're from, like, ethnicity, things like that schools usually ask. You also need your dent pin. So that's from when you took the DAT. The ADA should have assigned you a dent pin. But they have a link to like where to find your dent pin on the application. So you don't need to worry about that. And then other information, this part for the COVID one is new. So I think they put it on during our application cycle. That's when COVID started. So it's just 2,500 characters. And it's just pretty much how has COVID impacted you, like in terms of grades or like personal life, like things like that. So just if you feel like COVID negatively impacted you and in terms of your academic performance, or like if you have less shadowing hours, things like that, this is where you can write about it. So 2,500 character, that's number of letters, like not number of words. So like letters and spaces. And then the manual dexterity one, that one has always been there. It's 600 characters, and it's just like what you do for fun, what you've been doing to develop your manual dexterity. So for example, for me, I talked about I was in origami club. So that was like, using your hands, manual dexterity. I also talked about playing an instrument. So I played the cello for like over 10 years. So I talked about that as well. Honestly, like anything that you enjoy doing, or like that you've been doing to build up your hand skills, this is the place to talk about it. 600 characters.
People write about like video games, like embroidery, like woodworking, like literally anything you do that involves your hands. So you can just get creative with it.
Oh, and then next is academic history. So this one is also pretty straightforward. So you want to put in which high school you attended and which colleges and universities you attended. Make sure you include every single school you attended. So for me, I had 5 schools on this application because I took a lot of community college classes for my GEs, and I would take them at different community colleges depending on like the schedules they offered. So just make sure you know like which schools you've attended, even if you only taken 1 class from that school, it still counts. So yeah.
Yeah, this is just an example. I took organic chemistry at a different university, and so I had to include that in my universities attended. And then there's 2 things that you have to do for transcripts. So it's a little tedious. I have to say, I'm not really sure why they make us do it, but you first have to input, like manually type in every single class you've ever taken, which semester or quarter you've taken it. And then like you have to put in what grade you got, how many credits, like units it was, and then like what category it is in. So I think the category part is very confusing for a lot of people. So yeah, just make sure you just like, I think that they have a little call line that you could also go to ask for help if you have
questions filling out this section. But then after you manually type in every single thing you've ever done, then you also have to send in transcripts for the schools. And then the AADSAS, they once they get your transcripts, it takes them some time to verify these transcripts, and then they go through and match. Oh, sorry, could you mute yourself? Thank you. Yeah, so they go through and then they match the transcripts with the coursework that you've manually entered. So make sure you fill this out right during the soft opening, and also send in your transcripts during the soft opening, because it takes a while for them to receive it. And after they receive it, depending on how busy the cycle is getting, it might take them up to like a month or even more to verify everything. So this is where it's really important to submit early. Yeah, and I said, it says here, so electronic transcripts, you can get them on the portal from like Credential Solutions, Parchment, National Student Clearinghouse. Most universities like offer one of these transcript services. But if your school doesn't offer these services, you have to send it by mail, which is even slower. So like I emphasized, send in everything really early.
And I was thinking we could just answer the questions after each section so that it makes more sense, you know? And so someone asked, can the English composition class be any type of writing class? It really depends on the class. So for example, at our university, we took a class called like Pacific Seminar, and you have to verify it with the school to make sure that it's considered a like English composition course. And so that's kind of just like more personal work. So you have to kind of figure out, contact the school and ask them if that class would allow it. But all of the like academic office, like Office of Student Affairs from each school are usually really helpful. And so they'll just help you with that if you reach out and
just call them, and usually they have someone to answer these questions.
And then someone asked, do AP courses count for course requirements?
Yeah, I think they do count for, they definitely do count for certain classes. So I believe AP Psychology for UCLA counts. But again, you should always like double check with the school itself, because a lot of times like they'll change their requirements or update them. So yeah, but I think yeah, AP for psychology, generally I think AP for English as well, possibly. And then like APs, like if they qualify for your college like degree, if they usually those will count as well.
Yeah, because I took AP Calculus in high school, and so I like counted that towards my degree in college, and then they accepted that. So yeah, usually it does. And then someone asked, do you need to complete all prereqs prior to applying? And the answer is no. So if you're applying your site, you know how you have to apply the year before you matriculate. So if you're doing 4 years of college, you can apply your third year, and then it'll match up so you attend dental school right after you graduate. And so as long as you have it planned in your plan, you have like a section that allows for you to include like your planned coursework. So you like also input your future transcripts, and so, or your future like schedule. And so as long as you have all the prereqs in there, then the schools will allow it. And then usually after you get accepted, they'll contact you and just confirm like, oh, like you took these classes, right? And so you don't have to take everything.
And another thing is, I know for me, I was planning on taking, since UCLA requires psychology, I was planning on taking it like my spring semester, but then I ended up like taking it at a community college because I graduated early. So then it's okay, it's totally okay to like switch schools as long as you just make sure the class, like the subject and the class like still matches to the prerequisites.
Someone asked, what would you consider the cutoff to be for an early application?
July. I think mid-July is still considered early. After mid-July is like on time, I'd say. So yeah, June to early July, I think is considered really early. Some schools do start sending out interviews as early as July, end of July, I've heard. So just keep that in mind. You do want to try to get an early interview, so that way you have a higher like chance of your application being like reviewed over and over again.
Yeah, but don't sacrifice your application just to send it in early. So you want it to be a good quality application. And someone asked, can you explain secondaries to me? When are you given the prompts for secondaries, and do you submit it after you submit your AADSAS application? So there's actually a section in the AADSAS application at the very end. We'll talk about it in the future. And so secondaries, like it can just be literally any question that the school wants to ask you. So some schools ask like, why our school? And some schools ask like very hypothetical, ethical questions. Just depends on what that school requires. And not all schools have secondaries. So we'll talk about it a little more later and it'll make more sense. Yeah, and so if your spring 2022 final grades will not be out on June 1st, should you still submit your official transcript without those grades?
Yeah, I think you should submit your transcripts as early as possible. And I know it's a little extra money, but then when your final grade, your spring final grades come out, then you can, I think you can just submit it again, just ask for another transcript. But yeah, I think it's better to just get all your transcript early, and then just that small semester won't be verified. But I think schools usually understand. And then in academic update period, we'll talk about later, you can like verify those classes again. So that's in August. So that's like beginning of fall quarter.
Someone asked, does UCLA require that all prereqs be taken at a four-year institution? And I believe the answer is no. I guess it depends on the school. So before you sign up and before you take a class, I would just give Noemi, which is, she's really great. She's in charge of like all that, like the administration stuff. Or Maribel or Anna. You can find them on the website. I would just contact them and just make sure, just in case. But I believe the answer is no.
Yeah, I think it depends on the prereq though. For science classes, you definitely have to take them at a four-year university. So things like chemistry, biology. It might be different if you're a transfer student from community college, but generally they have to transfer over to a four-year college. But things like psychology or like the general like education, English things, I took them at community colleges, so and it worked out. So those ones should be fine.
Do you need to send in high school transcripts? I believe, or at least for UCLA, you send those in after you're accepted. So you don't have to send in your high school ones like when you send in your application, but after you get accepted, they'll ask for your high school transcripts. But I'm not sure if every school does that. Do you need to send AP scores as well? No, as long as your university clears it as like part of your like towards your degree, then as it'll show up on your transcript for your university as like AP credit. And then so that'll like, it's fine just doing that. So you don't have to send it in. Does the soft opening apply to all dental schools?
Yeah, the whole portal is open. So you can't submit to any specific school yet on May 10th, but the portal is open for you to start filling out all your information, filling out the personal statement section, filling out biography, filling out transcripts, just everything. So you can fill out everything, but you can't push the button to submit. You can't pay your fee to submit yet.
Can you submit AADSAS to each school separately, or do you have to apply to them all at once? And if you can submit separately, can you edit the application between submissions? So AADSAS is kind of like the Common App. I don't know if you guys use that, but you send out the same application to every school. So the same personal statement, the same academic history, everything is the same. And so the only thing that would differ is secondaries if the school has them. Can you plan for additional shadowing hours similar to planning prereqs that haven't been taken?
I believe.
I don't think you have a section for it. You can write about it in the COVID section.
Yeah, say that you're planning on taking more, but like you haven't taken it in like so far because of COVID, and now COVID's getting better, so you're planning on shadowing more. That would be in what I mentioned earlier, the COVID impact statement. Yeah, so that's where you can explain it.
Yeah, but don't add it in your experiences like future shadowing. Like I'm pretty sure that won't be helpful to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Definitely when you're filling out your extracurriculars, which we'll go over, you can only write things that you have done or are like doing currently. Don't write things that you haven't done, but we'll get more into that later.
And can we submit our application without the DAT score and then just update the app around August? The answer is yes, you can submit your application. Like say you're taking the DAT later, but you're done with your application, you can just send it in and then submit your DAT later. The only thing is, I think some schools might not fully review your application.
No school will look at, well, actually it depends on the school. I think some schools, I think UCLA for our cycle, not sure about this one, they started looking at application before you don't need a DAT to like be reviewed, but I think most schools still require DAT for your application to be reviewed. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, but August isn't late. Don't worry, you're not late if you apply in August. Does UCLA have a secondary? The answer is yes, but the real answer is no, because the questions are not like, you don't have to write any like new information. The only thing is you have to pay like an $80 secondary fee. Does retaking classes and getting a higher grade at a community college increase your GPA after you graduate? Is it something you'd recommend? I'm not sure if it would increase your GPA because you're taking it at a different institution. I'm not positive. Do you know?
I don't think you should retake a class if you got above a C. Yeah, I believe that's not something the dental schools really look for. I think if you have a C, just like they might ask you about it in the interview, but then just make sure you can explain. But I don't think you should be retaking classes unless you failed them.
Yeah. And then the next question is kind of about our next topic. So we'll just move on and hopefully your question is answered.
Okay, so continuing academic history. So there's two ways you can submit your DAT scores. So for those of you who have taken the DAT, I hope I hope you knew to select all schools to submit, because when you on the day you take your DAT, you can choose to submit to whatever school you want for free. So what I did, and I'm pretty sure what Adeline did, was to select send to all schools. And the pro of that is that it's free. But the con is that you don't know your DAT score before you send in. And then the second way you could submit your DAT is like after the day when your DAT score comes out, you can choose which specific schools you want to send to. But the con of that is you have to pay for every single school you send it to. So I would really recommend, if you've taken it, hopefully you chose to send it to all schools. If you haven't taken it, please select the option to send to all schools. Even if you don't apply, it doesn't matter. Just send it to all schools.
And so the third section is the supporting information. Yeah, so I'll just talk you guys through this bulk section. And so the first thing we'll talk about is evaluation, so letter of recs. So like Jocelyn mentioned earlier, you want to ask early. So for this cycle, if I was applying this cycle, I probably would have asked before spring break. But it's okay if you haven't already, just do it as soon as possible, just because you want to give the faculty or whoever you're asking time to write a good quality letter, especially if you want to apply early, right? It's already May and the soft opening is in 4 days, and you can start submitting your application in a month. And it's kind of like a tight, you just want to be considerate and give them time to write your application or your recommendation, because you're not the only one they're probably writing a recommendation for. And so there's two options for the recommenders to submit. So you can upload it directly to the AADSAS portal. And so what you do is you have there's a section in the portal to input their email, and then they'll get an invite where they just directly submit the application, the letter of recommendation, directly to the portal. So you don't have to worry about it. And it's free, so it's a pro, but then you can also upload it to a letter storage service like Interfolio. The pro about that is that they'll store your letter in there for more than a year. And so if you're a reapplicant, you can, or if just in case you want to have it on hand, you can use Interfolio, and then you just can keep the letter. And then if you want to reapply the next cycle, you'll have that letter already on hand. And so the question was, can you submit the letter of recs after submitting the application? Yeah, you can, but your application won't be reviewed until those go in, like the letter of recs, but those are really up to the recommenders to submit. So that's why you want to ask early, because for me personally, the only thing that stopped me from my application being reviewed earlier was because my professor didn't submit the evaluation that early, even though I asked early. But that's like something that was out of my control, but yeah, you just want to ask early. And then someone asked, since we submit that same application to all schools, do we include all 4 letter of recs, since they each have different requirements regarding from who the letter is? And then would they take a look at only the ones that apply to the requirements? I believe, so most schools require a dentist, a professor, and
Two,
two
two
professors.
professors, usually, I think most schools, the minimum is two professors, two science professors, one dentist, and then some schools have a fourth requirement. So I know Loma Linda, which also in California, another dental school, they require one letter, an extra fourth letter from a spiritual leader or something. So then versus like I know Harvard, they required three science professors and then um, one dentist. So it just depends on the school. They do each have different letter recommendations, but I don't believe you can't change which letters you submitted after you've submitted. So just make sure you know the schools you're applying to, what their recommendations requirements are. Because the portal only has 4 spots for letters. So once you submit them, you can't change those 4 letters.
You kind of have to pick and choose which schools you want to apply to, but the good thing is that most schools require the same thing. So for me, I just did 3 science professors and then a dentist because that required, or that covered like all of my prerequisites for all the schools. Yeah, and so yeah, you just want to make sure to research how many and what kind of letter recs each school requires, because if you don't meet that requirement, then they're not going to review your application. People asked, is it necessary to write the COVID essay? If it didn't really impact me, did you guys write that section? I would write it. If you have the option to write something, write it, because the application, like the bulk of it is so like, it's just administrative, you know, it's just like your information, where you're from, what high school you attended, what your grades are. So if you have an option to write something that's a little more personal, then I would write it. Yeah, and so will schools review your application before your letter of recs are submitted? We answered that. The answer is no. Do you manually enter your high school grades and college grades, or only college? Only college. High school is not, don't worry about high school transcripts when you're applying. Do most schools do the first or second option? It depends. You know, like if you are a reapplicant and you want to have the letters on hand, or if you're not a reapplicant and you just want to have them on hand, you can use Interfolio. But if you don't want to spend money, then
yeah, if you want to save money, which is what I wanted, I mean, Interfolio isn't that expensive. I believe it's like a $50 subscription per year. So not too bad if you have like taking a gap year and want to ask your professors before they forget who you are. That's a great option. But if you're applying straight out of school, like what I did, I would recommend the AADSAS portal. That one's free. Yeah.
Does it have to be lecture science professors? I believe yes. I would, just to be on the safe side.
You can always call to ask the admissions office.
Yeah, I would just ask to be sure. Is the Casper required for UCLA? I don't think so, because I don't know what Casper is. Do they ever ask for non-science professors? So we answered, it depends on the school. I would just look it up. Can you update the app once submitted? We'll talk about that later.
What if you attended high school outside the US?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a good question. I mean, we do have students at UCLA, or we have classmates at UCLA that did go to high school in other countries. So if you want, we can put you in contact with them if you have questions during if you have questions while you're filling out the application, just DM us on our Instagram, the ASDA Predental, and we'll be happy to find someone who has the same experience.
Yeah, sorry, we don't want to give you the wrong information, but I'll put the Instagram, the chat. Okay, and then let's move on to experiences. So you want to start complying your extracurriculars now if you haven't already. So it doesn't have to be a super intense, comprehensive list, just something for you to refer to so you remember. So it's hard to remember the hours you shadowed and where you shadowed and all that stuff. And so this is just like an example of like the first 5 things that I have in my Excel sheet, just to show you guys kind of what I use. So I blocked out their contact information and location, but you want to keep that because they'll require it later in the application. You have to submit that information. And so just something for you to refer to.
And I'd recommend just write down the 600 characters right now, because I'd say just start working on your descriptions now, because this is what held back my application, since there's so many extracurriculars that I'm sure all of you are part of. So it's very tedious.
Yeah, and you have to do it for each experience, right? And so I'd say like 10 to 15 experiences is like considered pretty competitive. Like that's 600 characters 10 to 15 times. It's a lot. From experiences, I had an internship that I was laid off from because of COVID, but was rehired after 2 years. So how would the start and end date work for this? I would just do 2 separate experiences. I wouldn't include the 2 years, you know, so just do them as 2 separate. Can you add experiences to your application once you submit? The answer is yes. So those academic update periods we were talking about earlier, there's like timelines where you can input new information. So within that timeline, whatever new things you do, so new shadowing hours, new leadership positions, new experiences, you can add those in. But a key thing to remember is that you can't take stuff out of your application. So whatever you add, it's there forever. A minimum or maximum of 600. I believe it's maximum, but you want to kind of, you know, it's better to write more than less, unless you're like writing things that aren't like relevant. But you know, you want to show what kind of person you are. You want to make it a personal application. You don't want it just to be just like a robot, you know, because like say you shadowed, right? You can talk about specific things you did to show, you know, that you were actually invested in the shadowing and that you actually learned something and got something out of it.
Also, I just want to mention 600 characters actually isn't that much. It's probably like 2 to 3 sentences, because it's characters. Remember, characters are letters and spaces and periods. So just keep that in mind, but just write what you learned during the experience.
Yeah. Are all descriptions supposed to be in complete sentences? You have the option to do it in bullet points or sentences because it doesn't really matter, but I would recommend doing full sentences. It just looks a little bit more professional. I had a significant amount of shadowing hours with 2 different dentists. Can I consider this 2 experiences, or do you advise it to be 1? It's 2 different experiences. So on this slide that you see, the last 3 things, I just shadowed there 3 days in a row, but I counted it as 1 experience because I shadowed like 1 office, but then each office that I shadowed was a different experience, if that makes sense. So Dr. Zuazaki was 1 experience. Dr. Gongai and Dr. Ru were 1 experience. They can only be added during the academic update periods. Yeah, so you want to make sure you are aware of the timeline, because after the academic update period like ends, you can't change your application. How many experiences can you put on your application?
As many as you want.
Yeah.
But schools most likely won't look at every single one, because you have the option to, we'll get into later, star 6 of your most important.
Yeah, so you want to add as many as you want. You want to bulk up your application, but don't add things that are like trivial, you know?
Yeah, like 3 hours of, I don't know, like something that's not that important. Maybe volunteering 3 hours would be okay, like if it's like for CDA cares or something, but just things that you think are important to you.
Yeah, and another thing is I would add mostly college experiences. I guess it depends, like if in high school you had something really impactful, really big, then I would add it, but don't add all of your high school experiences because you're in college now. And do you need a supervisor listed for every experience? I believe the answer is yes, because it's like required, but it's just someone that basically they have the option to contact this person to make sure you're not lying on your application. And so you want to add someone that can vouch for you. And I am heavily involved in a club where I held multiple positions and worked on multiple projects. Am I allowed to break up my involvement in this club into multiple experiences? I can actually answer this in the next slide. So here is just like an example of just like a snippet of my experiences. I think it's like the first, I don't know, 10, 9, 10. But as you can see, I have a section that I was really involved in my school's pre-dental society. So here the second line, and then also at the bottom here, not bottom, in the middle right here. So I was a treasurer 1 year and then president 1 year, but I included it as 2 different experiences because I had 2 different responsibilities. So yeah, I would just split it up. And then do we have to shadow specialists as well? No, you want to shadow I would recommend shadowing a general dentist because at the end of the day, when you graduate from dental school, you're going to be a general dentist, but you can also have specialists that you shadow as well.
Yeah, feel free to like just shadow whatever you're interested in, but the bulk of your shadowing, like at least like probably 50 to 100 hours should be a general dentist, because that is what you graduate from the dental school as.
And yeah, what Josh was saying earlier about starring the 6 most important. So you can highlight your 6 most important experiences that you want the schools to see that you highlighted. So here are the 5, or I highlighted 6, but it's in the later, or it's at the bottom, but you just highlight the ones that you think were most important, most impactful, you know, things that were the biggest roles you took on. And so, yeah.
But actually, I just remembered something. But to keep in mind, even though you start these ones, schools can look at all of them. So I remember at my UOP interview, the student interviewer, they asked me about my cello playing, even though I didn't start. Like I played cello for so long, so I thought I'd include it on there. And they just like, I had a really great conversation. So just keep in mind, just make sure your descriptions and like your experiences are good.
What if we started shadowing at a dentist, which turned into me getting hired at the same office? Would that be 2 experiences? Yeah. I shadowed at this office with Dr. Suizaki, and then I got hired later. So I added them as 2. But then the dental assistant position was a lot more interesting and impactful. So that's why I started. Okay. Supporting information continued. Sorry, this section is very long, but achievements, it's pretty self-explanatory. You want to add any scholarships, awards, etc. You don't have to submit any physical certificates, but that's why you have a contact reference, you know, so that they can confirm. So the dental school application, they're not going to go ahead and check every single thing to make sure you're telling the truth, but they have the option to, which is why you want to be truthful and you want to be honest. Also, like, you know, do the ethical thing, do the right thing. But yeah, so achievements is just an example of some things. I didn't really have that many. I just had like scholarships and honor roll. But if you have things like poster competitions that you want to, different certificates, honor societies, you can also add those. And then licenses. So if you were previously a dental hygienist or dental assistant, or if you just have any other license, this is where you would add it. It's pretty self-explanatory. I didn't have any, so I didn't add any. And then lastly, here's the personal statement. So yeah, this is where the application, the person who's reading the application will learn the most about you. So I'm sure you guys know the prompt is why dentistry. And so you have 4,500 characters maximum. And if you haven't started writing your personal statement, I would just begin now, just writing a draft. Just write something out and then you can edit whatever you have. And so, yeah. Oh, we have some more questions. I volunteer at a community dental clinic and my volunteer work includes shadowing, community service, and volunteering work. Since it covers 3 things in one, how would you recommend this to my application? If you're volunteering, I would just consider it one experience because most of those things, you're doing the same thing, you know, you're doing community service, you're doing volunteer work, you're shadowing, but they're all the same action. So I would just choose out of those 3, whichever one you want to highlight. So I would just call it volunteer work or just community service or just shadowing. Yeah, I read that the AADSAS website says to include honor roll as one category and then indicate. Oh.
Yeah, I think then if it says on the website, then you should do that. Yeah. Someone didn't read the website, but yeah, honestly, it's not a big deal. It's just like awards. So like they can just skim through that if they want.
Is X-ray certification under achievements or licenses? I believe it's under license.
X-ray, that's license. I'm pretty sure it's a license.
Because you have to take a test. Can you list future achievements? No, you can't.
Oh, wait, license. Actually, I think license, they have a selection of like specific ones.
But they have another section.
Oh, they have other licenses. So I think the X-ray would be included if you have a number like date, country.
You can't do future achievements, but you can put them as the academic period continues. But for example, I graduated with summa cum laude, but I didn't add it because I didn't have it at the time I was applying. Is research experience required for UCLA? No, it's not. Sorry, we still have a bit of our PowerPoint left, so I'm just gonna speed through, but we'll have a Q&A at the end if you want to ask. So no, it's not required. It's recommended, obviously, but don't force yourself to do it if you can't. Do you actually have to type out the personal statement in the application? No, you can copy and paste it. So I just had it on Google Doc and then I pasted it onto here. Do you recommend any specific companies for editing personal statements or looking over applications?
Yeah, so I recommend like if you want to save some money, you can like ask your friends to look at it, or like if you trust someone you trust is like good writer, I think that would be a good place to start. But also if you don't have like don't not really don't trust, but if you want like more professional editing or more feedback, you can always like our ASDA like pre-dental outreach, we have this like mentorship program, application editing thing for $35. Actually, but I think, is it closed?
I think it might be closed for spring, but if you're applying in the future cycles, so not this one, you can definitely apply. But
Yeah,
yeah, like every prenatal club in dental schools usually has like something similar, like prenatal, like you can like have a mentor assigned to you. So just be on the lookout, like on Instagram and
Yeah.
stuff, they have it. Do you mind sharing the flow of your personal statement? I mean, it's very personal, you know, why dentistry? I talked about, I guess most people go with the flow. The first paragraph is like something a little more personal, a lot more imagery, and then you go into like different experiences. So I talked about periodontal disease and how it affected like my family. My brother was born early because of it, but it's like, you know, it's like personal, you know, you just talk about it. And then I went into like different, so I talked about like a specific experience I had when I was shadowing and volunteering that like made me realize why I wanted to do dentistry. Joss has like a completely different background.
Like honestly, just most people's will be the same. Like you want to help people, you like working with your hands, but I think it's really the way you write it that makes you unique. So just keep that in mind. So just make sure you have a good hook introduction, like, and then segue into what experiences you've done that has led you to really solidify your decision to pursue a dental career. So like I just talked about like I like working with my hands and like just like experiences that show that, rather than telling them I did this, this, and this, and now I want to be a dentist. Make sure you explain yourself.
Yeah. So how would you choose the most important scholarship work if you have multiple? It's really up to you. Like most of this application is kind of like what you deem to be most important. So I can't answer that for you just because I don't know what scholarships you got, but whatever you think is most impactful, you want to choose. Is it like bad if we include a certificate that has expired, but we still know how to take x-rays if we've been doing it at that dental office? If it's expired, I would not admit that I'm still taking x-rays. That's not okay. So yeah, maybe don't include that if it's expired. And then if you have multiple BLS certifications, do we put each one in the licenses category or the most recent one?
I think you just put the most recent one, and you could talk about maybe in your like extracurriculars or somewhere else, like maybe an interview, that you've been a lifeguard for many years, you have BLS for many years, things like that. Just put one though.
Yeah. Where would you put basic dental principles on our app? I think experiences is the most appropriate. Experiences is basically just everything that doesn't fit in the other sections. You can just add on there as an experience. Can a single opportunity be put into multiple categories? I wouldn't, just because I mean the application is so long and they're reading it through and through. So I would just choose which one it fits best to. Okay. What would you recommend for the minimum character number for a personal statement? Do you have to reach the max of 4,500?
You don't have to, but I think usually people do end up writing more than 4,500 characters and then cut after them.
Yeah.
So just make your personal statement as descriptive as possible and make it like like it's sort of like a story, I think is a good way to put it, like a storytelling thing. So like, you know, like I guess chronological order could be one way you could organize it, or you could do flashback, but like just yeah, you don't have to reach 4,500 characters, but that's honestly not too much. It's only 700, around 750 words. So
like a page and a half. It's really short. Like, yeah, both of us have the problem of like having to cut down rather than having to add up. Okay. And so, yeah.
So next we'll move on to program materials. So this one's also pretty short. Hopefully we'll get through it fast. Okay, so step 4, program materials. So if you click on the program materials section, this is what you'll see. You can add programs over here. And then once you add a program, this page, when you click on the program, it'll show you this page. Like, so for example, I logged into my AADSAS again, but the only school I could find was Iowa, because that's their deadline is in September for this coming cycle. So yeah, just this is where you add programs and you can submit applications. And then this is where you see this question section here. This is where they'll most schools will have their secondaries in this question section. I know a few schools like send it out later after you've been invited for interviews. So just be on the lookout for that. Yeah.
Do you submit supplemental questions the same time as the regular application?
Yeah. So you submit no. So you submit you submit your supplementals like if they're on this question page that for the program, then you need to finish writing all your supplementals in this questions before you submit. So yes, you submit supplemental questions the same time as the regular.
If they're not on there, like for example, I know University of Pennsylvania, their supplementals are like through their own little thing. So you submit this AADSAS application first, and then you go to their website and submit their secondaries. So it kind of depends.
And then we'll come up. Okay, so this, yeah, good luck.
Yeah, that's it. Good luck. We believe in you guys.
Yeah, and then we're gonna hold the raffle now. So